Okay, so today we're diving into this really kind of complex and unfolding situation. It's about the review of visas and the detention of a few different people who've been involved in pro-Palestine activism here in the U.S.
Right.
And you've given me some really interesting sources for this deep dive.
Absolutely.
We've got news articles from The Guardian,
Yes.
Fox News, and then some really helpful, I'd say, briefing documents and FAQs that did us, I think, a really solid foundation to work with here.
Yeah.
The case that seems to be capturing the most attention right now is this woman, Rumeysa Ozturk. She's a Turkish doctoral student at Tufts University.
Yeah, that's right.
So today, I think what we want to try to do is unpack these events, explore the different viewpoints presented in these sources, and then really try to pinpoint the key takeaways and questions that are coming out of this.
Yeah, I mean, what's so interesting is how, this one specific case with Mrs. Ozturk seems to be highlighting a much broader issue and a series of actions that we're seeing right now.
Okay.
So we're going to look at the specifics of her case, but also what it means in terms of the wider context of these visa reviews and what seems to be a bit of a shift in how the government is approaching immigration enforcement.
Okay, so let's start by talking about the actual event that's put this story in the headlines, which is the arrest of Rumeysa Ozturk.
Yes.
This happened on Tuesday, March 25th, 2025.
Correct.
And she is, as I said, a Turkish citizen. She's 30 years old. She's a Fulbright scholar. She's pursuing her PhD in philosophy at Tufts.
Impressive.
And the way in which she was detained is really quite striking. She was apprehended right outside of her home in Somerville, Massachusetts.
Yes.
And just to add to that, this happened while she was on her way to break her Ramadan fast. So the whole situation is really, it's very noteworthy.
It is. I mean, the way the arrest happened as well, I think, is worth talking about. The sources describe these masked individuals.
Right.
In plain clothes. They take her phone. They take her backpack.
Wow.
They handcuff her. They put her into an unmarked car.
Yeah.
And, you can see why somebody who saw that happening would think that she was being kidnapped.
Of course.
And the fact that these people only identified themselves as the police without, any further information. Without clear markings on their clothes or anything like that.
Yeah.
It makes the whole scene quite unsettling.
Yeah. And the reaction to this has been pretty huge.
Yeah.
The Tufts University President Sunil Kumar said that the university had no prior knowledge of the event.
Right.
And that they found the footage disturbing.
Yeah.
Which I think really highlights, maybe a disconnect between the university administration and what actually happened.
For sure. And the Massachusetts Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell, went, even further than that.
Okay.
And called the arrest alarming.
Right.
And she suggested that Mrs. Ozturk was specifically targeted.
Wow.
Because of her political beliefs.
Okay.
And she even used the word intimidation.
Yeah.
Which is pretty powerful.
Yeah.
And it signals that there is a concern that actions like this could have an impact on free speech.
So we've got this dramatic arrest and these pretty significant reactions. But what was the official reason for her arrest?
Right. Well, this is where the Department of Homeland Security, or DHS, comes in.
Okay.
They released a statement saying that Mrs. Ozturk was detained because they'd been investigating her, and they found that she was engaged in activities that supported Hamas.
Right.
Which, of course, is a U.S. designated foreign terrorist organization.
Right. And so that accusation carries a lot of weight with it.
It does. It does.
But one of the interesting things is that there's no real specific details that have been made public to back it up.
Yeah.
A DHS spokesperson did say that glorifying and supporting terrorists who kill Americans is grounds for a visa to be terminated.
Yeah.
They called it a matter of common sense security.
Right.
And they did confirm that her student visa was revoked.
Wow.
But, that's a very serious allegation to make without any publicly available evidence.
It is, and it raises some really big questions.
Yeah.
What's the standard of evidence here?
Right.
What information are they using to justify this kind of action?
Right.
And without those specifics, it's really hard to know how valid the claims are.
Exactly. And how do we even define support in this context?
Exactly.
So, what do we know about Rumeysa Ozturk's background and what kind of activism she was involved in?
Yeah.
News reports do indicate that she was involved in pro-Palestinian activism at Tufts. Specifically, she co-authored an opinion piece.
Okay. An op-ed.
Yeah. In the Tufts student newspaper.
Okay.
And this seems to be a significant part of this whole story.
Yeah.
It criticized Tufts University's response to Israel's actions in Gaza and towards Palestinians.
Got it.
And specifically, it took issue with how the university reacted to these resolutions that were passed by the Tufts Community Union Senate.
Okay.
Back in March 2024.
Right.
And these resolutions had some pretty specific demands of the university.
Like what kind of demands?
Well, they wanted the university to publicly acknowledge the Palestinian genocide.
Wow.
They wanted them to apologize for statements made by President Kumar.
Okay.
They wanted them to disclose their investments and divest from companies that have ties to Israel.
So basically her activism was focused on this op-ed.
Right.
And, disagreeing with the university's stance on all this.
Right. And, her friends and colleagues have also said that, this was really her main focus, that this op-ed was really her main focus.
Right.
They haven't seen any evidence of her supporting Hamas.
Okay.
One friend even said that the only thing they knew that she organized was a Thanksgiving potluck.
Really?
They also strongly deny that she's anti-Semitic.
Wow.
Or that she harbors any hateful views.
Okay, so this is a bit of a different picture than the one that the DHS is painting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So let's move on now to the legal developments.
Yeah.
On that Tuesday night, March 25th, a federal judge in Boston, Indira Talwani, granted a habeas petition that was filed by Ozturk's lawyers.
Interesting.
And for our listeners who don't know,
a
habeas petition is basically a legal action that challenges whether somebody's detention is lawful or not.
Okay.
In this case, the judge's order requested that Ozturk not be moved from Massachusetts without the court having 48 hours notice. And, that seems like a pretty big intervention by the legal system.
It does. That sounds like the judge was worried that Mrs. Ozturk's rights could be violated.
Yeah.
And that the court needed to be able to keep track of things before she could be transferred anywhere.
But despite this court order, things took a bit of a turn.
What do you mean?
She was transferred to a detention center in Basel, Louisiana, on Wednesday, March 26th.
So the next day?
The very next day.
But how is that possible? I mean, didn't the judge say...
Well, this is where things get really complicated.
Okay.
The government lawyers argued in court on Thursday, March 27th, that the transfer to this detention facility had actually happened before.
Wow. Before the order.
Before Judge Talwani's order was issued.
Okay.
So it all comes down to the timing of the transfer versus the judge's order.
So basically they're saying that they were already in the process of moving her.
Right.
When the order came through.
Exactly.
That seems like a very small window of time.
It does. Yeah.
I wonder about, how they were communicating internally.
Yeah.
About all this.
For sure.
And whether they followed the right procedures.
Right. And Judge Talwani didn't seem totally convinced by this explanation either.
Okay.
Because she then issued a new order.
Okay.
On the Thursday. And she gave the government until Friday to explain why Ozturk was still being detained.
Okay, so they have to give a more detailed explanation.
Yeah.
Got it.
Ozturk's lawyer then withdrew an emergency motion.
Yeah.
To have her physically produced in court. Because, she was already in Louisiana, so that was no longer applicable.
Okay, so they withdrew that motion.
Yeah.
Got it.
ICE did confirm that she's being held in Louisiana.
Okay.
And that she has spoken with her lawyer.
Okay, so at least she's got some legal representation?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so... this whole sequence of events really shows how urgent this situation is and how high the stakes are.
Yeah.
But this isn't an isolated incident, right?
That's right. This is part of a much bigger process of reviewing visas that's happening right now.
And U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has publicly said that this is going on.
Okay.
And that it's mainly focused on foreign nationals who have been involved in pro-Palestine activism.
Okay.
And he cited some pretty incredible figures.
Like what?
He said that maybe even more than 300 visas have been canceled already.
Wow.
These were all people connected to campus pro-Palestine protests.
Okay.
And he said that these actions are continuing.
Every day?
On a daily basis, yeah.
Wow. And he also called those people lunatics.
He did, yeah.
Which is,
yeah,
pretty strong language.
Yeah, and it's only going to make people more angry about all this.
But the State Department, in their statement to Fox News, said that they've actually only revoked more than 20 visas.
Okay, so a much smaller number.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that they have hundreds more under consideration.
Okay.
Because of national security concerns.
So there's a pretty big difference between those two numbers.
There is.
But either way, it's a lot of people.
It is, yeah. And a lot of sources are calling this a crackdown.
Yeah, I can see why.
And it seems to be part of a bigger push to really enforce immigration laws under this current administration.
So it's not just about the protests?
It's not.
No. Okay, what else is going on?
Well, they're also pausing green card processing for certain refugees and asylum seekers.
Okay.
And there's also a directive to deny entry to transgender athletes.
Okay, so this is all part of that same kind of shift in policy.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So what are people saying about all of this?
Well, the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR, has condemned Ozturk's detention.
Right.
And they called it an abduction.
Wow.
Which I think really shows how worried they are about the way she was arrested.
Right.
They've also said that it violates her right to free speech.
Yeah.
And academic freedom.
And Ozturk's legal team are saying that she had a valid F1 student visa.
Right.
And that she hasn't actually been charged with anything.
Wow.
They're demanding her release.
Yeah.
And they're saying that this is a real problem for due process.
Absolutely. Right. And the big question is, are these actions really about national security?
Yeah.
Or are they about punishing people for having certain political views or for criticizing the government?
And the fact that we don't know the specifics of the evidence against Ozturk makes this even more worrying.
Right. It just fuels those concerns even more.
Yeah, for sure.
And makes people question what's really going on here.
So to sum it all up, we have this situation where Rumeysa Ozturk, a student at Tufts, has been detained.
Right.
They're saying it's because she's been supporting Hamas.
Okay.
The way in which her arrest was conducted.
Yeah.
The fact that she was transferred to Louisiana, even though there was a court order preventing that. And this bigger issue of the U.S. State Department reviewing visas of people who are involved in pro-Palestine activism.
Yeah.
It all adds up to something that's both complex and concerning.
Absolutely.
And for me, the key takeaways here are that we need to think really carefully about how we balance the need for national security with freedom of expression and with academic freedom.
Absolutely.
And this is especially important for international students who are in the United States. We also need to look closely at what we even mean by supporting terrorism.
Yeah, what does that even mean?
In this context.
Exactly.
And what kind of evidence do we need to justify these really serious actions?
Yeah. These are questions that we need to be talking about.
We do.
Yeah.
And, we can't forget about the speed of Ozturk's transfer. And how that relates to the judge's order.
Yeah.
That also adds a whole other layer
of
complexity to the legal side of this.
It does.
So, this leads us to a question for our listeners.
Okay.
Thinking about all of this.
Yeah.
What does it mean to exercise your right to free speech as a foreign national?
Good question.
In today's world.
Yeah.
And how might these huge visa review processes affect the free exchange of ideas and the intellectual inquiry that happens in our academic institutions?
These are such important questions.
They are.
Yeah.
This whole situation really makes us think about the rights and protections that are offered to people, regardless of their citizenship status, particularly when those people are involved in politics and in contributing to our society.
That's what it's all about.
It is.
Yeah. Food for thought.
It is. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
For this deep dive.
My pleasure.
We'll see you next time.